Welcome to Adventures in Solitaire. Today we'll be discussing the Hostile Setting book for 2-6 role-playing systems. Alright, so today we'll be talking about Hostile Setting. Now, before we get started, I have always been a fan of fantasy. I've always been a fan of science fiction. With science fiction, I have just like fantasy, I have a lot of loves there. Um, When I was growing up, there were a few key movies and media that really just had a major impact and would have an impact on me for the rest of my life and continue to have an impact on me today. And the hostile setting specifically covers that for science fiction role playing. And so I think probably the best way to go about this is to kind of look and see what the book itself has to say. And I think it has some interesting things to say. So it has it has some movie inspirations, and what I loved was that it just so happened to cover almost every single key movie for me that had that tone in that setting for sci-fi that I enjoyed. So, and I'll briefly run through these. So, like the Alien series, and not like Aliens versus Predator, but specifically the Alien series, Outland, Android, Blade Runner, the new and the old, The Thing, The Abyss. Moon, Total Recall, Event Horizon, Pitch Black, Screamers, The Sphere, Running, Elysium. Some of these are more modern movies, but um, and I skipped a few there. But of those on the list, those are the ones for me that had some of the biggest impacts on me as a as I kind of took in media. So it says Hostel is a setting, a book for the Cepheus engine and other 2d6 sci-fi RPGs. So definitely, it definitely has that OSR type feeling. It isn't necessarily aimed at advanced role players. However, we do assume that the reader is familiar with role-playing games in general. And then I'll kind of go on, and I think this is probably one of the cooler points. So the future, a place of opportunity and adventure among the stars, new worlds to explore and conquer, abundant alien life, rich resources, and the freedom to wander between star systems. The future, a bright and optimistic land. The future's here. It never lived up to the hype. Interstellar space, interstellar travel itself, was harsher and more uncompromising than anyone could have imagined. Where were all the Earth like worlds we were supposed to meet and communicate with? Where could humans actually stand and take a breath without wearing a blank spacesuit? Yes, there were worlds with atmospheres, and some of them don't even kill you. But that's the real joke that the universe has played on us. You see, you can't get everything at once. Temperate climate, a breathable atmosphere, a friendly biosphere. Choose two. 200 years ago, optimistic dreamers like Gerard O'Neill imagined waves of happy Earthmen and their families rushing into space to settle there, to build immense colonies in space habitats, to grow vegetables, and to set up schools and businesses. Well, you never saw anyone trying to colonize Antarctica or the Gobi Desert, did you? And those harsh wildlands are hundreds of times more hospitable and survivable than outer space. So the waves of colonists stayed put. Out here, interstellar space is a workplace. The only Earthmen you'll see on the planets and moons that orbit these distant stars are miners, loaders, freighter crews, colony technicians, drivers, and executives. And they'll only be happy when their tour of duty ends with a few months' leave and a nice bonus in their bank account. It's a tough life. The universe doesn't make oil and mineral extraction easy, and there are 100 different ways to die out there. Few of them leave anything to ship back to Earth. This is a life suited to the tough, to the imaginative, and to the stubborn. Do you still want to sign up for a tour? Don't say I didn't warn you. So I think that was it's a pretty good opening, and I think that's part of what makes it special. As mentioned on page 12, um, it's really based on these gritty industrial future settings. So like when we're thinking about uh, like like dark and gritty. I mean, if you can recall like an Aliens or Total Recall or Event Horizon. Outland in particular as well. These were like really industrial, well used, well traveled. They told a story just walking through them. It wasn't all shiny, pristine, and nice where it could have just been made yesterday. These were places that were lived in. That idea of these, again, these tight spaces where if something is going to happen, you're enclosed. And that is something that I look for in science fiction. I tend to be drawn to movies with that kind of environment. Not that I'm a big fan of horror, and this isn't necessarily a horror system. I would say far from it, although it does have elements of that if you choose, like most other role-playing systems can have. But you can certainly imagine yourself in a lot of different situations, whether you're cruising through space as an engineer with nothing but the hum of the hull, the air pumping through the ventilation system, the slow drips of condensation on the pipes. I mean, surely nothing bad can happen, right? Or imagine being maybe a space marshal, traveling from spaceport to space station to space station, and trying to hold the peace, or maybe solving various different issues or crimes from the places that you go to through your tours. Or maybe what about the Space Marine trying to survive a situation gone wrong, or being hauled around the local systems trying to solve problems at the point of a red hot barrel? That ammo counter just ticking down. Hostel kind of takes all those settings, it does, and more, and it brings them to your table, and it gives you the ability to kind of experience those things. At least for me, those movies and those situations that I so enjoyed growing up, and to this day that I still enjoy. So one of the things the book does through the introductory section is it talks kind of a little bit about Earth's history. How do we get to this place where we're at? As you can see here, it talks about this thing called the Second Recession, the insurrection on Tau Ceti, the eco collapse. It covers the various nations of Earth. So it just kind of does a good job of just explaining, again, how we got to the setting. Hostel has probably enough data and details in it to please just about anyone. If you want to know how many metric tons of fuel are consumed in like an average burn, or the atmospheric detail of different types, Hostel definitely has that covered. It even covers ship construction. Down to the software installed on the computer and what kind of computer system you have, and the grade of those said systems. But, I mean, the bottom line is with all that detail, it probably has more than most of us will probably ever use. And I don't think that's anywhere near a bad thing because if you need it, it'll probably have it. You probably won't have to ask often or at all, does it have what I want or I need, at least for this setting? Hostel has a fully mapped local galaxy. Um, and you can kind of see here, it's this six sectional piece starting from near Earth in the opposite corner extraction zone 9, the Capella extraction zone. But and it seems like that's pretty basic, but it goes into really great detail for each of them. So, for example, we have the near Earth sector, right, or the zone, and here it is. We have a much more detailed map, and then within that we have the like hexagonal like code and references. A lot of these places, he actually has really well mapped out, or not really well mapped out, but really well like detailed information about the individual planets. So there'll be a section that kind of talks about it and covers the information about that planet and what's going on, the government, the wildlife, etc. Like so, for example, it covers there's a whole section that talks about world data and what you can expect, and so that includes like uh, the name, the starport, the class of the starport, the size of the planet, the conditions, the atmosphere pressure, survival gear that's required, hydrographics, population, and it covers all different types of population types there. The government level, the law level, the tech level, which area of tech that they specialize in, bases, trading codes, and goods. So, I mean, the climate, it really covers quite a bit for those planets in pretty good detail. And it allows for you to kind of run into planets that haven't been discovered maybe as well and kind of find, maybe randomize these a little bit and find stuff on your own as an explorer if you wanted. With the hostile setting, I think when we think about the future, we think about corporations ruling things, right? In hostile, you have corporations, but bigger than that, you have the conglomerations. And it provides good details into the major conglomerates in the universe. Some have very similar sounding names, like instead of Wayland Yutani, it is Leyland Okuda, for example. So definitely there's some inspiration here for sure. But it'll cover those conglomerates in some reasonable detail, and it can kind of help for theming your game out and understanding what their interests are and how they might kind of have an effect on your gameplay. It also covers again some of the smaller corporations that really kind of fall under the umbrella of one conglomerate or another. The book also covers like military and policing forces. So within the hostile setting, you'll find like detailed information about the Marine Corps, the Space Command, the Colonial Marshal Service, Colonial Defense Force, private military contractors. That's a mouthful for sure. And thank goodness for it, because when I first opened the book, I didn't expect all of those to be covered. But these are things that we're used to hearing mentioned in some of these grittier sci-fi movies. And I don't know about you, but I certainly would be interested in seeing them running into them in a campaign, whether they're helping me out, I'm helping them out, or that I'm going against them, or maybe that I'm actually a part of them in some way. There are also other organizations. It includes like it covers nonprofits, a few of which are part of the policing forces that I already mentioned, and it also they'll cover like criminal cartels as well. Hostel does a good job of walking you through character creation as well. For the hostile setting, it follows similar rules to various versions of the Traveler and Cepheus engines. It covers this using the setting and theme that's covered throughout the book, and it'll walk through just like with the typical Cepheus and Traveler engines through every 4 years of your career until you're ready to play out your desired career, assuming, of course, you survived your career. Um, and so with the careers that are offered for the hostile setting, there's Android, which is a little rough to play, but it does at least try to include that. I'm sure we're all aware of how the androids work in some of these settings. It didn't always work out too well. The corporate agent, the corporate exec, the colonist, the commercial spacer, the marine, the marshal, the military spacer, the physician, the ranger, the rogue, the roughneck, the scientist, the survey scout, and the technician. And then it'll break down the specific skills for the hostile universe itself and what they're used for, um, with a little bit of background for each. It also includes quite a bit of information for gear and equipment, a lot more than I expected. Yeah, I mean, for example, like just even for communicators, it is so well themed. Like it has the an uplink radio, long range radio, the headset, video phone, Zenith ZLR uplink transmitter, the CRM 50 base station transmitter. I mean, it really does its best to drip with theme. So that you can just read right into it and feel like that's part of this world, that's something that's tangible. It does a really good job of that. Computers, the data cards, optical discs, disc players, pass cards, data networks, um, the different various types of computer software and levels of it, medicine, personal devices, explosives, robots and drones, vehicles. It just covers so survival equipment, shelters, so much. Um, and I'm not naming them all here. Obviously, I can't go through all of them, but there's quite a bit that it includes there. It has range weapons, melee weapons, obviously quite the extensive amount of range weapons to choose from there, which is great. Not great for your character though, because survivability in this game can be rough if you're not playing it smart. The game also does a good job of providing a walkthrough for what the Cepheus engine calls managers, what a lot of us are familiar with as DMs or GMs. And it just kind of provides a walkthrough of what you might think about when you're trying to create create the world, the setting, and the experience that those characters are going through. The other thing that I'll say about it is, as I go through this, the book is not just doesn't just cover like the material thematically, it itself is thematic. So you literally are getting like adverts and information that is not integral. Like he could have stripped that all out and just kept to the theming of the system and describing things and would have been fine. But he went the extra step and he included iconography for like life support, med bay, and all this other stuff that didn't have to be done. He includes magazine ads and offers and various things like that to just really kind of almost draw you in while you're reading. And I really like that. I know that's not the first time that it's been done, but I enjoy it when books do their best to try and bring you in with a little bit of unneeded extras. I really enjoy that. It also covers a little bit about the horror, and in particular the different types of alien life that you can run into. In this system, when we are thinking about aliens, you're not thinking about the aliens. They're going to be designing technology that are going to be flying around, at least not in the way that we would. They may say take over a host body or something, and maybe they can utilize that in some way, but they're not going to be we're not be making contact. These are aliens that are more like beast than intelligence. Of course, you never want to assume they're not that intelligent. We've seen how that's turned out in some of these movies. I know that like in one particular franchise, we refer to aliens as xenomorphs. In those types that you would think of in that way that are similar, we would be calling those exomorphs. So he definitely, again, does pay homage here, and but not just to that. But if you, I don't know how many of you have seen some of the older the cheesy 80s and 90s movies, some more than others cheesy. But they're certainly in that era. They certainly did their best to try and create the equivalent to the like say the Alien franchise and having their own horrors and their own monsters. And there was a range of those, right? They weren't all exactly alike, and this does that here too. So, if that does interest you, having some life forms that cause problems, and no matter what their shape, size, or abilities, um, that it does lend itself here. It is represented in some way, whether by this book or others. He does his best to bring those in. So what about earning the pay dirt? Well, it does cover a little. It does cover. There's a section called the earning hazard pay that covers kind of how that pay works out, how you can earn it. What if you're running your own ship? How does that how do you load out your ship? How do you find the right type of trade runs? How do you, um, all that type of stuff for pay, even if you're just collecting a paycheck just because you're on the ship doing your job, it covers that as well. Or maybe you're a Marine and you're out, getting ready to collect your paycheck before you go out and leave. It covers that. Obviously, it talks about the different types of other problems you can have from exposure, radiation, just the different types of problems that can happen on the different jobs that you have. How to go about doing certain types of jobs is also covered. Um, again, as mentioned before, it does cover starship construction, and this stuff is detailed. If you're familiar with the Cepheus engine, then you're probably already somewhat familiar with starship construction, and this won't surprise you too much. But the amount of detail that goes into a Cepheus engine starship construction or hostile starship construction is immense. If you if you're the type that enjoys creating characters, but you like sci-fi and would like to be able to make your own starship, well, it literally has a ship design checklist. We can go down that really quick. So, decide on a role. Choose a ship hull. Note the hull and structure points. Determine the hull streamlining. Install armor. Optional. Choose power plant. Choose hyperdrive. Choose maneuver plant. Determine power plant fuel. Tonnage equal to PP tonnage. Determine maneuver drive fuel. zero point 0.1 times hull size times MN. Determine bridge. Choose ship's computer. Choose computer software, if desired. Choose ship's electronics. Choose number of required crew. Choose staterooms and low berths. Determine additional features. Select ship's vehicles. Decide to include hangar space or not. Determine weapon mounts. Optional. Determine ship weaponry for these mounts. Optional. Allocate a remaining space to cargo. Access to design. Is there too much space left over? Have you run out of space? Go back and modify your choices if needed. When finalized, calculate the total cost and construction time. It's crazy. Like it's probably more detailed than character. No, it is simply more detailed than character creation. So if you like designing stuff, this will do it. And in the Cepheus setting, again, this may not surprise you if you're familiar with it, but you literally can have the floor plans and where you put this stuff. Like this is an entire ship right here where you and with multiple decks, where you put that stuff's important, right? It makes a difference to the role playing. It makes a difference to the ship, and you do need to represent it on your floor plan. So it's just pretty amazing. If you don't want to design, Hostile does have a selection of ships that are in operation in the Hostile universe. This covers small craft up to commercial and military grade starships. Um, they don't have schematics and layouts, but it does a pretty good job describing the features that you need to know and what they're capable of. And then, of course, earlier just a second ago, I showed you the ship design. That is a very, very specific ship design. If you are familiar at all with a certain science fiction franchise that's already been mentioned, then you may um, recognize some of this layout, which is super cool. Other Hostile books have more detailed information on various ship types, and I understand the book can only cover so much. And I'm glad that it included what it did. Towards the back of the book, it offers a pretty large array of mission templates that gives a rough overview of situations and missions that can happen to a crew or a PC or PCs in general. This is a really wonderful asset for the soloist because you can kind of use that to kind of help as a conjecture-based resource if you want it or need it, or maybe just if you want to kind of randomize it just a little bit. But it really does give quite a few different ideas for things that could happen. It's kind of almost a mission generator, if you will. The book also has a range of tables and things for some events. It also has a set of predefined crews. Like here's like a mining roster for a mining crew, or Starship Manifest crew, U.S. Marine Corps, like group of Marines there you can choose from that are just ready to go if you wanted to use them there. It also, in addition to schematics for ships, it has a full um, like outer world style colony schematics. And you can see here it has bar and club, a lounge, kitchen. We've also got maintenance, offices, fusion core, offices, briefing rooms, heavy water tankage, a garage, vehicle airlock. Looks like we have dining hall, communal area, family rooms, but as you can see here, it really does a good job of just kind of laying out the different building stuff you could run into in a colony situation. I think maybe if you think, say like this second Aliens film, right? I think this kind of fits kind of right in there with that type of setting. So I could certainly see yourself going into an abandoned base, or maybe one that's not abandoned, it's running, and maybe you want to go with that space marshal type deal where you're utilizing this to maybe do some investigation and I could just see a lot of stuff happening here. So it's very nice that that was included. Certainly not needed, but included anyway. So what doesn't the book have? Well, Hostel does cover alien life, planets, extraplanetary travel, jobs, etc. There are other supplements that Zozer Games, which is the company that made that, ran by Paul Elliott, also the designer of the book. It's basically it's its mastermind there. They have other supplements that he's created that go into much greater detail for various individual aspects of the hostile universe, which isn't that abnormal. I mean, when I think about a setting book for whether it's fantasy or otherwise, it's really rare. In fact, I want to say it's really rare. I don't know that I've seen one that just covers everything you'd want it to cover. Do you typically have to um, get other books that cover more fine details about that setting, and that's true here. But for overall wholesome view of this setting, this is probably going to be your best entry into Hostel. My thoughts on the Hostel setting. Awesome book. I was so excited to get it. I'm still excited to have it. I think I'm also one of those players that sometimes they'll find that they'll get books that will kind of set in their library that they just enjoy reading. Even if you're not playing it, you're enjoying going through the material. And this is one of those books for me that I just really just enjoy going through it because it's so thick with theme and well, setting. But that pretty much covers it for my overview and review of Hostel. Great book, does a great job of providing this a setting that I have a hard time finding anywhere else, and I definitely recommend it if you're a fan of the Cepheus engine. And that's all for today. Thanks.